All right. All right. You guys hear me okay? All right. Well, thanks for coming, guys. Sorry for the delayed start there, but let's jump right in. My name is Greg Foss. I work for Logarithm Labs out in Boulder, Colorado. And today, I want to talk about honeypots for active defense. So kind of taking a new approach to defensive tactics. So, a little bit about me. I'm a senior security research engineer with the labs team at Logarithm. Part of the threat intelligence side. So we do a lot of incident response, penetration testing of both our products and our internal security protocols, our people, things like that. I used to be a penetration tester before joining Logarithm. I used to work for the Department of Energy, one of the national labs. And so now, I've kind of taken a different approach. I still do a lot of the red team style stuff, but instead it's more with the aspect of trying to learn from it, trying to see what we can see as a defender, essentially. So, when someone's breaking your network, what's that look like at all the different layers? The logs, the network data, all the different aspects that you can key in on and actually trigger alerts on to detect attackers before it becomes a major issue within your network. So, first I want to talk about some traditional defensive concepts. So this is just very high level, what a lot of us are doing right now. Maintain a tough perimeter. We want to actually protect our organization from outsiders, right? Keep them out. We also want to implement layered security controls. Of course, we have to have IDS, IPS, AV, host-based monitoring, all the different layers that you can put in place, essentially, and they're all very critical. And that's what we're all doing, but are we using them properly? Are each of these layers able to talk to all the other layers? And that's kind of what I want to dive into today. Block known attacks and ban malicious IPs. So using a firewall, you block known attack vectors. You block ports you don't want access. Simple stuff like that. But these aren't really the vectors that attackers are getting in through, right? We create and enforce policy to discourage internal misuse, right? And then cross our fingers and hope that all this actually works. When in reality, it doesn't always work. There's really no magic security product or tool or anything like that that's actually going to protect you. This is coming from myself as working for a vendor. It comes down to getting the right people and the right tools. You have to get the right people, train them well, and give them the tools that they need to be successful in detecting these attacks. And leverage all the systems and everything that you already have in your environment and take the messages that those generate to actively defend your network. Because it's a fact now. It's not if, it's when. There's always a way that they're going to get into your network. And that's why the focus of my team at Logarithm is really focused on the inside, looking at what attackers look like when they're pivoting through your network. When they're not hammering at your firewall. Why are you alerting on blocked firewall attacks? I mean, it's good to know at a high level, but is it really something you need to actually dive into? Not necessarily. And it's not just these APTs and threat actors that we have to worry about. We have to worry about internal adversaries as well. You have people that work for you that, may not be the most trustworthy people, especially if you have very high value intellectual property. So that's why I really like the active defense approach. Now, and this graphic is just great. So what is active defense, right? Bears riding sharks with AKs, yes. No, in actuality, it comes down to simply tipping the odds in your favor, using your environment and tools that you already have at your disposal to annoy attackers, bother them, distract them, trap them in environments that you control and that you have verbose monitoring set up on so you can watch them and learn from them. Gathering data and actually trying to get true attribution on the attackers. Now, there are ways to do this, and it doesn't always work, but we want to try and get there, essentially. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. And then, quote-unquote, attacking back. Now, I don't mean attacking back in a sense, actually gaining access to someone's system, getting a shell on them, those types of things, because attackers do have a right to privacy, and you can actually get in trouble by attacking back in that way. You want to do it in a safe manner, and that's kind of what we'll talk about in a bit. What it really comes down to reducing the mean time to detect and mean time to respond. You want to close this gap. Right now, if you read the most recent Mandiant report, it said 205 days was the average time to detect an attacker within the network and respond. We want to try and close that gap, and honeypots are one of the ways that I like doing this. So why internal honeypots? I'm not talking about research-based honeypots sitting on the internet catching flies and whatnot. I'm talking about internal honeypots you set up within your network on trusted systems, and you have set up there so that you're looking at what's happening inside your network that you might not know about or that you don't know about yet. And the thing with honeypots, a lot of misconceptions about them, they're actually not very complicated. Most of them are just simple Python scripts or other simple tools that you can just set up and basically set there, and then they're good to go after that. Basically fly traps. If one of these alarms triggers, you know it's something bad in your network. You know it's something you actually want to look into, right? And one cool thing, you don't need to put a whole lot of time into these because they're inside your network. So they don't even need to look very legitimate. They just need to be legitimate enough that they'll raise a flag once someone trips an alarm, once someone logs into an SSH honeypot or something like that. And you'll learn a ton about your adversaries just by simply watching them and guiding them into your own traps within your network. And this is very key when you're working incident response, because if you simply just go in and say, okay, this person got in, we've removed the malware, we've re-imaged the system, it's all good. Well, it's not. 9 times out of 10, if you're dealing with an advanced adversary, they have all sorts of different ways in and out of your network. They're not just coming in through the one gate that you found. They have other holes open, and the only way to find those is actually watch them during an incident. So, one of my main things when I walk into an incident with someone is the fact that, we need to leave this up for a bit. We need to watch what they're doing. And people freak out about this, but in reality, they've probably already been there for a really long time. And one key thing when it comes to honeypots and active defense practices in general is the fact that this comes after you have the baseline security controls in place. You already want to have monitoring. You want to have your firewalls in a good state. You want to have people dedicated to monitoring this stuff. So you want to have all these things taken care of and then take it to the next level with honeypots and active defense. So, some use cases. Research. The obvious, main use case for honeypots today. People stand these up, throw them out on the internet, and just wait for things to access them. This has been done for years now. What I want to focus on is more defense. Using honeypots within your network, actually setting them up inside your network, setting honey tokens in your shares and stuff like that. Stuff that only internal people will access. Because it'll be, something that can trigger an alarm when an attacker is already in your network. So let's dive into defense a little bit here. So there are multiple tools out there that can help you with this. The first one is called HoneyDrive. Great little VM. You can stand this up within your environment. This one is more research focused, I would say, because it's not very battle hardened. It's not something you can stand up and expect someone not to gain access to. It's very good for research and learning how honeypots work and generating correlation rules and stuff like that. But for actual defense, my favorite distribution is the Active Defense Harbinger distribution. So this is by the folks at Black Hills Information Security and Secure Ideas. Actually, one of the guys who's worked on the project is right here, Mr. Mick Douglas. I suggest you go to his talk tomorrow. But this is an amazing tool. It's very useful in production environments if you harden it properly. You can set this up to monitor all sorts of different things within your network. It also helps you build honeypots and deploy them throughout the environment, as well as being a server that these things like web bugs can call back to. And we'll talk about this more in more detail here soon. First things first, though, baseline security controls. One of the most key controls that's very easy to implement is warning banners. You should have warning banners in front of every system that can be remotely accessed. This gives you leeway in the event you want to prosecute someone after running code on their system to determine their location. Warning banners can help keep you out of trouble, and they also allow you to prosecute the attacker. So what are some types of honeypots? On the inside? Yeah, I would put them on every server. Anytime anyone can RDP, what's that? On the inside? Yeah. Yeah, like say I'm an internal employee and I RDP to another system, I should be presented with a warning banner before I actually am granted access. Yeah. So types of honeypots. And note this is my interpretation, because there's tons of different interpretations out on the internet, but this is kind of how I summarize some of these. So no interaction, or other words, honeyports. Low interaction, providing basic services, essentially. Medium interaction, actually simulates something real, but still, it's not quite there. High interaction. Now this could either be something that actually simulates a full operating system, or is a real operating system that you actually allow someone to compromise. And then honey tokens, honey drives, honey strings, and all that fun stuff. So let's go into no interaction first. So this is primarily referred to as honeyports. So simply, they just log and ban on full TCP connect. So some basic honeyports that you can set up. These are very simple. You can just use netcat and IP tables on a Linux host. Just wait for someone to connect and block them out. This is also, if you have a chance, I highly recommend this book, Offensive Countermeasures, The Art of Active Defense. And that's actually where a lot of this content comes from. So this is a simple little script. You can actually do this in one line, essentially in Linux, and it'll just log and ban the attacker. Now you can take these IP addresses that are collected when they're banned, and then you can add them to a list, and you can actually use this against your whole organization to correlate on whatever else this person might have been up to. Now you can do the same thing with Windows, using netcat and netsh. Very simple little scripts that you can just deploy, and you can push these out to all the hosts in your environment if you want to do that. I wouldn't recommend it because then you're going to get a ton of alerts, but it is something you could do. And there are also Python and PowerShell tools as well. We'll look at those in more detail. So Windows PowerShell honeyports. This is a cool little tool here. It's by Carlos Perez and John Hoyt. Great little PowerShell honeyport. And so right here you can see we're the attacker. And all we're doing is we're trying to connect on port 21, FTP. First connection was successful. Right after that, because it was a honeyport, now we're blocked. So down here you can see our IP has been banned. So we're kicked out of this host now. We can't access it anymore. And all we did was just poke at it a little bit. So over here is the back end of it. So this is actually where the list of IPs that poked at your honeyports end up. Now Linux, Artillery is probably one of the best tools you can use for this. There's also port for Windows as well. But Artillery is a great tool. It's simple, it takes seconds to set up, and this thing, it'll just sit there and wait for anyone to try and connect on any of the honey ports, and it'll instantly ban them if someone connects to one of them. Very simple. And this is kind of what it looks like to an attacker. So they're trying to connect to it. And it does spit out some junk here, which is kind of fun. But yeah, it's an awesome tool. Now, the logging of this is very simple. It just has a flat file. You can either export it to syslog, or you can have its own flat file, or you can have it do remote syslog. And all you really have to do within your SIEM or whatever log management system you're using is trigger on keywords like artillery and blacklisted and banned. And you can trigger on this data and actually pull this back into your SIEM and use this to protect all your other systems or correlate back and see what else this attacker's been up to. Very, very cool tool. I recommend you look into this. It's a super simple tool to install and very easy to detect anomalous activity on your network once you stand it up. And so it also comes with this added feature, which is really cool. It comes with file integrity monitoring built into it. Now this is great because right here we're simulating someone uploading a web shell. We just have our simple little web shell here. And now you can see it's in our web directory. So we didn't actually do a real exploit, but we're just simulating someone found a hole in one of your web apps and they upload a web shell. Up here, you can see all the verbose logging that's generated when files change on the system. This is something very key to note. If you see one of your web servers all of a sudden show some weird PHP file, definitely something you want to look into. Now, has anyone here run honeypots externally before? Yeah? Oh, yes. I just like showing this. So this is the ban list from one of our honeypot servers. And this is just one day of running a honeypot open to the internet. I mean, you get hit all the time. And now this is why I tell people not to put things like RDP open to the internet without multi-factor authentication. Because you're getting hit constantly by people on the internet, whether you know it or not. This one was actually just port 21, so just FTP. Normally, I mostly see either 22 or 80. So 80 is common. You'll see like sweeps for like something like PhpMyAdmin or other web apps. And I'll actually get into that in a little bit here too. So learning from attackers, even when using basic honeyports that just ban when someone tries to connect to it, you can actually learn a ton from it just by wrapping it in something like TCP dump. So right here, I'm just running one line. So I'm running TCP dump, and we're listening on port 80 of our interface, and then we're writing the output to a file, and then we're also running netcat on port 80 and writing all the output of whatever comes at us to a file. So we can learn a lot from just anyone trying to launch random exploits at us. Now, I mean, there are better ways to do this, and I'll get into it in a little more detail later on. So let's get into low interaction honeypots. Web Labyrinth is a very cool tool. So this is great for detecting people trying to scan your web apps and spidering web apps and stuff like that. So the cool thing about this is it just creates content that looks like this with random links within the text, like this. And so whenever a spider sees this, it visits one of these links, dives in, and the next page looks just like this with some different text and different links. And it just keeps going and going. So spiders will get wrapped up in here. And so it's a quick and easy way to trigger on someone scanning your web app. Unlike, I mean, when you're getting scanned, it's already pretty loud anyway. But you can put this as a hidden form element within your site, and then so, someone just spidering is going to see that and branch off and hit this. And then so they end up basically in a tar pit. Now, if you're dealing with someone who actually knows what they're doing, they'll notice this right away, and they'll just cut it off. And they'll just keep hitting the normal app. But it gives you something to alert on and trigger on and follow through on. WordPot, another really cool honeypot. Basically, it simulates a fake WordPress application. Now, this is very key because WordPress is often targeted by all sorts of exploits. It's probably one of the most common CMSs out there in terms of being exploited. I mean, if you just look at exploit database, you'll see all the recent WordPress exploits just from the past month. So, a very cool app. You do have to customize it a lot if you want to stand this up. Because by default, it comes as version like 2.5 of WordPress, which we're nowhere near that now. So you have to do some customization. You can also add your own themes to it, or download themes and import them. It's very cool once you actually customize it and set it up so it looks realistic. And it just has basic flat file logs, so very easy to pull into your SIEM or whatever log management solution you have. PhpMyAdmin. This is a fun one. This is one I wrote years ago. And all it is I just cloned a real PhpMyAdmin site and just set up some logging on the back end. So, I mean, it's very simple. But the cool thing about it is if you allow people to exploit this, you put a weak password on it, and a bot hits it and logs in, then you get a ton of data on the exploits that they're using against you. And a lot of times you can catch brand new attacks against PhpMyAdmin apps using this. And it's pretty simple, just logs to a straight flat file. So you can see here, we're just tailing the logs. We're triggering on every single event in the chain too. So they hit the PhpMyAdmin site, they tried logging in, didn't work, tried logging again, it worked. Now it's compromised, they gained access. And now from here, if you have something like NetFlow analysis in place, you can actually catch the exploits that they're launching once they gain access. So that's why I like leaving the default login enabled, because then bots and stuff like that actually tell you what they're trying to run. Now you can use this same technique with anything. You can set up any fake login panel. And so this is one of the things we've been doing lately, is setting up fake login panels that resemble real services within the network. And you can use this sort of thing in like a reverse phishing exercise or something like that. Say you know an attacker's in, you know what system they're on, what system they're using as beachhead. Why not trick them into logging into our own portal? Anyone know why we might want to trick them into logging into something? Yeah, that is one thing we can do. My favorite thing, though, other than finding out the accounts they're using, is finding out where they are. Now this is hit or miss because it all depends on, if they're located within the US, it's usually easier to do this, but you can run client-side code on their system. And so the reason I like using a SSL VPN login is because running Java, once they log in, looks believable. It's something they'd expect, because after they log in, they're expecting, oh, this is a VPN. It has to do some stuff with my system in order to gain access. So it's a very believable technique, and it works very well. So right here, here's our fake little Juniper setup assistant here. You can also launch executables through them, but that's a whole nother thing. So the tool to do this, called Honeybadger, written by Tim Tomes, super smart guy, and this is an awesome tool. If you haven't messed with Honeybadger, you should go play with it, because it's just plain fun. So right here, you can grab verbose data from the logs from it as well. And it uses multiple different techniques to try and determine the actual location of the attacker, simply by running code on their system. And one of the methods is using Java. So here is just an example. So right now, I was proxied through Switzerland while accessing this document. And this is actually a document we used in another exercise I'll talk about at the end here. But yeah, so you can see here's my IP address. But then once I open this document, it shows where I actually was. So pretty cool. And this does work very well. I've run it a few times from my house, and it's actually pinpointed my location, like pretty much where my office is, which is kind of crazy. So let's jump into medium interaction honeypots. There are tons of medium interaction honeypots and whole medium interaction deployment services out there. But a couple I want to focus on are, one is Amoon. It's an older honeypot, but still works very well. And it lets you simulate all sorts of different services. And then Kippo. Kippo is probably my favorite honeypot. It just simulates SSH, and people hit it all the time. So Amoon. Now, Amoon comes with the ability to imitate tons of different services. So one of the key things, if you're going to run this, is to modify the configuration. You don't want to have RDP and SSH open on the same host. You want to make it look believable. And so you just modify the config, tell it what ports to listen on, and it actually acts like a real service when you connect to it. Though if people start poking at it a bit, they'll quickly realize it's a honeypot, because it hasn't really been updated in a few years. Right here you can see FTP. Here's our fake little FTP service going here. We tried to pull down a file. Telnet, or Telnet service. And then same thing as the others, basically very verbose logging. This one has just flat file logs, and it logs every single different service basically to a separate file. So pretty nifty. Now Kippo is awesome. It's very tiny, little Python script essentially with a few other things it comes with. But it simulates the SSH service, and it's very customizable, very portable and adaptable. So you can make this look like what your real SSH services look like, at least on the outside. Basically logs to flat files, makes it very easy to pull into your SIEM, and it also stores the full TTY session, which is awesome, because then you can replay the attacker's activity in real time, which is great. So it lets you know if you're hit by a bot, or you're hit by a real person, and a lot of other really key details. And it is one of the more popular honeypots. A lot of researchers use this and have it exposed directly to the internet. For that reason, a lot of attackers already know how to differentiate between a Kippo honeypot and a real system. There are a lot of pre-built-in techniques that bots already use to do this, and they'll instantly drop the connection, or if they want to screw with you, they'll maintain the connection and just leave it open. This happens all the time. You'll see bots just staying, connected to your host. That could cause issues with your ISP or something like that, so you want to watch this. And that's why I like deploying them inside the network as opposed to just exposed to the internet. You can also use Kippo as a great pen test tool. So, any of you guys know what security analysts usually do when they see a new system pop up on their network? 9 times out of 10, they will scan it with a full credentialed scan. Kippo is great for that. Domain admin, boop, right there. It takes seconds. Also, configuration management tools do this as well. They'll sweep your whole network, and they'll log into every system so that they can inventory services on them. This is a very huge problem because it's super easy to exploit and gain privileged credentials from. So this is kind of a fun little demo. So this is just showing Kippo essentially. So right now, we're running our IP table script. And so what this does, I'll show you here. So we're redirecting any request that comes in to port 22 to port 2222, which is where our Kippo honeypot will be running. And we do this instead of taking over port 22, so we don't have to run Kippo with elevated privileges. Oops. Let me skip ahead here. There we go. Okay. So now we started Kippo as our unprivileged user. Try to get rid of this little bar here. All right, so now we can see that Kippo's listening. And so now we're going to just tail the logs, and we're going to run some attacks just to see kind of what this looks like. Now, one of the issues that people have with running honeypots is they don't want to sift through the large amounts of log data. And I don't blame them. I mean, this is why you should have some sort of log management solution within your network so you can pull this in, normalize all this data, and make sense of it. So in the back here are the logs that are being generated, and over here in this other window is our attack, essentially, our attacker. We'll simulate. So right there, we grab the username and password. Pretty simple. So great if you want to build word lists too for pen testing. So now they've actually logged into the server, and now they're just running commands on the host. And you can see everything they do is being tracked back here. So now they're trying to pull down some malicious files. Another cool thing with Kippo is any file that's pulled down, it actually stores it within the DL directory. So you can use this to do all sorts of stuff. You could hash it, and then you could run that hash against everything in your environment, see if this malware is actually on any real systems. I mean, it all comes back to taking what you learned from the honeypots and correlating it back to what's happening in your real environment. So over here, this is a simple little script I set up to basically, whenever a honeypot's attacked, it forwards the TTY session log over to us. So right here we have our little alert. It says a Kippo honeypot, the name of the honeypot, and IP, has been breached. A log of the attacker's activity is attached for review. So we can just download this file, view it, and we'll actually learn what the attacker did. Funny thing, when I was recording this was actually a real attack. Someone tried poking at it. And then this one's my demo. So and I just didn't want to record it again. So I didn't use Unix to DOS for this either, so it looks kind of crappy. But once we paste it into a better text editor, we get the full breakdown of kind of what happened, just simply sent to us in an email. So it's just kind of nifty little things you can do to stay on top of your honeypots and be actively alerted, as opposed to actually sitting there watching them and managing them, like a normal system. So it frees up a lot of time. So if you are using Kippo and you want to automate that alert, I just wrote this quick little script here. And you can just set this up as a cron job or something like that with your existing Kippo deployment. And so you could download that here. You should be able to get that from the slides. Let's talk about high interaction honeypots now. So you're essentially imitating real systems or real hosts, real services, real devices, and you want them to act as honeypots in order to gather verbose data on what attackers do. So this requires a lot of dedicated monitoring. If you're going to run high interaction honeypots, you need to have someone watching them, because these are real systems. If someone compromises them and uses them to attack other hosts, this becomes your responsibility. So there are a few tools that we like using at Logarithm to monitor for this kind of stuff. Basically, we do run full actual real hosts as honeypots in a controlled manner. We have them set up so we can kill them and bring them back up whenever we need and stuff like that. But we also have a bunch of layered security controls in place so that we can monitor them and gather as much data from them as possible. So of course, we use the Logarithm network monitor and SIEM. We're doing full endpoint monitoring on these hosts. We're capturing every single piece of data that we can. Now, Suricata is very cool. If you haven't played with Suricata, you can actually use this to catch requests from the malware that calls out. Say you're running malware in your VM or something like that, you can catch and actually play with the malware using Suricata IDS and actually learn a lot about it. Bro IDS is just an amazing IDS. You should probably be running this anyway, because it's very powerful and very customizable, and you can learn a ton about attackers just by running Bro. And then Cuckoo is awesome for analyzing malware samples that you come across. Really good for just learning more about the attackers. Routers and switches. So this is kind of one of the high interaction honeypots that you can run. This is called the Roman Hunter, or Router Manhunter. And essentially, you can download it right here. But basically what it is you set up an access point, and you configure it to act as a honeypot. So this device will actually sit there, and it's a real router that people can really connect to and really access resources from. But that's only if you give it internet access. But what you can do is you can actually tie in this Python script, this Roman Hunter Python script, and this will actually just monitor the router, and anyone who actually does gain access to it, say, if you have like a weak password or something, or you set it up with WEP, and you just want to catch everyone who logs into it, you can grab that MAC, and then you can take that MAC, and then you can correlate it back to your real environment. Has this host shown up here? Who is this? What are they doing? So very useful and easy thing to set up. A lot of warnings with high interaction honeypots. If you're going to use real systems as honeypots, you need to be monitoring them. You can't just let them sit and hope that nothing bad's going to happen. If they actually get compromised and you're not monitoring them properly, how are you going to know, right? How are you going to know that they're not in your other systems? Now, there's actually an incident that comes to mind dealing with this. So, never use your organization's gold standard image for deploying a honeypot. This is a bad idea for a lot of reasons. Now, the incident I want to talk about deals with this company who deployed high interaction honeypots using Windows hosts open to the internet. Now, one of these was actually compromised. The first thing attacker does, dump local hashes, right? Of course. And they took that local hash, passed it to the inside from the honeypot. So they didn't segment either. So, bad. So be very careful with this stuff. A lot of risk. So segment these hosts. Very key. Do not have them connected to your production network. Let's talk about honey tokens and document bugging. Now, honey tokens are fun. They're very easy to deploy. You can just use file integrity monitoring. There are a lot of tools that do this. Logarithm's one of them. But essentially, you can monitor anything that happens with files. You want to monitor for access. You want to monitor for modification. All sorts of stuff. And this isn't limited to files. This could be strings, this could be drives, directories, all sorts of stuff. But basically, you want to generate a unique log whenever something like this happens, so that you can actually trigger on this and act on it. So document bugging. There's a lot of ways to do this. My favorite, though, is using this little web bug server tool. There's a how-to on how to do this and kind of the details of bugging documents over here. And then Webbug Server, simple tool you can download and install, and it allows you to bug documents and track them. So essentially, this is the same tricks that marketing has been using for years. Whenever you get one of those emails that has an image in it, but it really doesn't have an image, it's like a blank white box or something, they're tracking you. They're seeing if you open their message. If you allow that to call back, you're giving away your location, or your IP address, not necessarily your location. But same sort of tricks that have been used for years just to track, sales and lead generation, that kind of stuff. But we can use this to track documents and actually track attackers. So very simple to do. All documents really are, like all Microsoft Word really is essentially a browser with a lot of customizations in it. Because it can actually process web content. So right here is just simple bugs that we would be injecting into a document. Now, just recently I decided to automate this. So I wrote a simple little script to essentially go through and bug hundreds of documents at a time. You can download that here. But basically you just feed it a list, and essentially you just plug in what documents you want to bug and what files you want to create if you want to create new web bugs. Very simple. You deploy these and they'll call back. There are issues though. So say someone opens this up offline and it tries to call back. Well, it'll get blocked. It's not going to be able to reach back to your server, and it might give the attacker a warning. Now, this is why I like using web bugs that have real images, so it doesn't look too weird when it's trying to call back and grab like a logo or something like that. But it's something to be cautious of. You also want to change Webbug Server from, you don't want to have Webbug Server listed when it's calling back either. So, so let's look into this. This is a fun little thing we did recently. Kind of looking at phishing in a different way. Reverse phishing, actually attacking the attackers, right? So this is a wire fraud scam that originated. And so what they're doing, this is actually going on right now. It's kind of a big thing we found out. But they're targeting CEO and CFO combinations, basically sending an email to the CFO from the CEO saying that they need to perform a wire transfer for them, right? And so what we did is we set up a fake account, a fake admin assistant. And the CFO replied to the reply to address, which was like ceodesk1@outlook.com or something stupid. And so he replied, and he's like, oh, do you still need this? Let me have my so-and-so help you with this. So his admin assistant, which is us. So he replies, and of course, right after that, he sends us a message back saying, oh, yes, thank you. Could you please process this wire transfer? So just from his email directly to us, we were able to gather all sorts of information about this guy. First, he used his real email to send us this message, to spoof the other message from the CEO through his email to us. So that's right here, Bolaji. You can't guess where this is going. And then here's the reply to. So here's where he wanted us to send our replies back to. Now, here's his LinkedIn. We just did a quick Google search on that email right here. I don't know. I mean, this guy seems kind of, he might be fake, might be real, you know, whatever. But either way, we thought it was funny that a quick Google search turned up this person. So we sent him a form, a wire transfer form. We asked him if he had filled out the wire transfer form yet. And if he hadn't, we attached it for his convenience. So I mean, it's not even a good-looking form. Like, this thing's obviously pretty fishy looking. And now, we also added some other key details. So this just has the web bug embedded in it, right? But we had click here to digitally sign and submit the form, which this looks even hokier, but it worked, which is hilarious. So once they click this, it's a wire transfer initiated. Please enable Java and make sure, so we wanted him to run client-side code on his system. And, you know, we thought it might be believable because he had to process a form that was on his system through some sort of magic that we just created. But it worked. So here's our email that we sent back to him, just basically highlighting, you know, what we were asking him. And as soon as he opened the document, we were able to get his IP address, which is pretty cool. So this is the webbug server logs, and down here are the Apache logs. So you can get a lot of data from both of these. It's pretty neat. We're able to get his IP right here, and we're also able to tell he was using a tablet PC, a little Asus PC, and so a lot of neat data about him, right? Yep, located in Nigeria, of course. And he filled out our document and sent it back to us. Now, we actually contacted the bank that was involved here because it was a U.S. company, and there are some other things that happened that I can't show in terms of actually tracking this person down. But needless to say, we contacted the right people, and it actually turned out to be you know, more than just a fun little exercise. So, what are some more tricks, though, if you just want to ruin an attacker's day? Zip bombs are fun. Hide these. And these are great. It looks like a tiny little file until they expand it. And then, you know, it goes from like, you know, 1 meg to like 5 gigs or something like that, depending on how mean you were when you created the zip bomb. There's a little tutorial on how to make them here too. Beef, probably one of my favorite tools ever. If you find cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, this is amazing. But you can also use this for attackers. You can play jokes on them. You can just track them. You can get shells with Metasploit using Beef. All sorts of really cool things you can do using Beef. This actually came out about a week ago. Anyone look into USB Killer? This thing is crazy. I'm afraid to build one because I know I'll plug it in and destroy my computer. So, but it's cool. So if you're dealing with a physical adversary, you know someone's on site, you know, you could set this up and you drop this somewhere, but be warned, this will fry your computer if you plug it in. But if all you're going after is messing with attacker, that's a great way to do it. This is a fun trick. Just cat dev random to netcat. Simple. Simple. Have you ever seen what this looks like? I just like showing this because it's hilarious. And a lot of times, if you're messing with attackers, some of them will actually try and catch the data that's coming back and try and analyze it and see like what's running on this host. So it can just keep them busy and it distracts them. This is what it looks like. And as long as you keep them distracted and messing with all your fake stuff, they're not messing with your real stuff. And that's kind of the goal. That's kind of what I want to what I'm trying to get at here. This is another really fun thing. This kind of takes the dev random stuff to another level. So you can actually play ASCII art movies when someone connects on a port. This thing's awesome. So they're telnetting, and now they get rickrolled. So pretty cool. So I love this thing. It's great. So let's get to the serious stuff. So monitoring. You need to have dedicated people watching your logs, watching your network, and actually seeing what's going on. A SIEM, I mean, that's essentially Logarithm's core business, is what we do. But essentially, you could do this with whatever tools you have. It just comes down to you have to know what your systems are doing and actually take the data that your systems are giving you and using that data appropriately to defend your network. You also want to have other layered security controls like your IDS, your network flow sensors, firewalls, all these other things in place so you can fully monitor this stuff. And basically, once it's set up, it's pretty easy to maintain going forward. And so you can actually build your own threat intelligence data using this. You can develop IOCs, custom IDS and SIEM rules, all sorts of different things, all based off of event correlation. So taking the data at hand and actually using it to learn from attackers. So first step, you want to extract and normalize the data to display basically the interesting metadata, the stuff that you care about, right? You want to track known attackers. Basically take any indicators and add them to a list so you can correlate across your environment. That could be usernames, IP addresses, all sorts of different things. And look back in time. So check to see what else this attacker's been doing in the past. So you see them poking at this system now. What did they do yesterday? What did they do the day before? You want to build this whole picture so it'll help you actually understand the risk, the real risk. And gather and hash malware samples. So if you do actually come across malware samples, usually once they're already inside, there's no need to even use malware anymore. But if you do come across it, you want to hash that and correlate it across your entire environment to see if this hash shows up anywhere else, anywhere that you might actually care about. So dashboards, there's all sorts of different dashboards that you can monitor these things with. Because you don't want to have to go in and look at raw logs just to understand what's happening on your network. HoneyDrive has dashboards for pretty much every honeypot that it comes with. It's great. Really cool tool, really good for, bubbling up the interesting stuff up to the top. Kippograph is one of these. Really cool for just monitoring Kippo in and of itself. The modern honey network. Anyone mess with this? This thing is pretty cool. It not only has dashboard functionality, but you can also deploy honeypots with it. Now, as much as I like this, it's kind of limited in the sense that you have to deploy the honeypots it comes with. You can't just push out services to real hosts and hide them in a way that makes them look believable. It's basically just push out a bunch of honeypots and monitor them. So what I use mainly is our SIEM. So I build dashboards that essentially monitor for everything that we're seeing on the network. So some of the data you want to capture, so this is essentially one of the honeypot dashboards. We'll just go through some of the key data you should be capturing if you're monitoring honeypots. You want to gather the top IP addresses, who's poking at you, right? Trending in relation to the rest of the environment. So you want to see your honeypot alarms in relation to events that are happening on real hosts on your network. Usernames, obviously. Passwords, even better. Honey token file access. If someone's accessed any of these honey tokens, you want to know about it. You want to have that right up where you can see it right when you log into your SIEM. User agent strings. These are very often overlooked when it comes to analyzing honeypots or analyzing attackers that are attacking honeypots. But you can learn a lot about the tools that they're running. Now, the real thing is they'll actually pop out when you hover over them. But you can tell what tools they're running. And a lot of attackers don't bother to change the user agent strings of these things. They'll just run basic tools at you, like Nikto and all sorts of other tools, and you'll be able to capture all that data very easily. Payloads. You want to know what payloads are being downloaded. You want to see what files they've pulled down. You want to see where they are. How many different files there are that your honeypots know about. And you want to be able to go and grab copies of these and see where they actually came from. And so that's right here. We're just showing where the files were pulled down from. And then directionality. You want to see where attackers are coming from. Now it does say local a lot because a lot of this was just me messing around. But with all that, you get a good high-level overview of what your threat landscape looks like in relation to honeypots and your environment. So, just a few closing thoughts. I think we're probably almost out of time here. You want to take proactive measures and lay traps and flags that will actually notify your analysts when activities are observed on your network. Implement warning banners and prepare legally in the event you want to prosecute someone who's actually breached your network. Create and enforce policy around the deployment and execution of active defense strategies. So some of what we talked about is kind of outside of the normal realm of security practices. A lot of us in security are used to just sitting back and, removing the threats, getting rid of them. Why not actually mess with them and actually learn from them? Develop plans for how to actively respond. You have to have this documented. If you don't have plans for how you're going to do this and have it prepared, you still need to hit the basics first. But this also is not just on the security team. You want to coordinate with all of your admins, with the other groups, because your other groups need to know where these honeypots are so they don't log into them. They also need to know that this is something you're deploying throughout the environment and that they should be actively reporting to you and helping you to deploy even better. Now, very last thing, some works cited and recommended reading. I talked about this book a little bit earlier, Offensive Countermeasures, The Art of Active Defense. Amazing book, really, really quick read too, highly recommend it. Blue Team Handbook, another really quick read, but really good. Great resource just to have. Both of these books are really good resources just to have on hand in the event you end up doing some of this or you're working an incident. And then Logging and Log Management. This is an awesome book that talks about the benefits of logging, pulling logs from everything in your environment and actually learning from what you're seeing and tuning it so you can better tune out some of these false positives so you get the actual interesting stuff kind of bubbled up to the surface. And then A Practical Guide to Honeypots is a cool little white paper. And this just talks about kind of all the different honeypots and deployment methods. Now this is a little old, so it's not too recent, but we're still a really good read. With that, thank you guys. I think we might have some time for questions. A couple minutes? Okay. Oh, yes.
What I guess I would call honey logging.
Oh yes, yes. Honey accounts and yeah, we do some stuff even with honey, not passwords, but honey tokens for like the. Why am I drawing a blank? So if someone dumps the local hashes and they use a certain account, we want to know about it, essentially. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that would just be something you push out, even in your gold standard image. It just says a known bad account. Right. And there are even other ways to do it too. Say, the local admin account is always going to be disabled, especially for remote login across the environment. So yeah. So there's a few different ways. Yes.
Once an attacker is inside, what's the first thing you're going to see them do?
Dump local hashes on the system. So if they're on a Windows host, they'll usually dump local hashes and then try and pass the hash. That's usually what we see. It depends though. There are some attackers. Like there was a report released earlier this year, I believe by FireEye, talking about this group that all they targeted was email. So they were basically going and they were stealing passwords to email accounts, and they were using a very elaborate phishing scheme where they were actually emailing to and from trusted parties. So it all seemed very legitimate, but all they were stealing was the passwords, and they were using that to monitor these companies. And it ended up being a big stock scam. So they were trying to find out what new things were coming out and where they should invest their money and stuff like that. So it just depends on the attacker, and what they're after. So, any other questions? Things to throw? Yeah. Well, thank you guys.